As part of our series on voluntary work in Germany, this time we are looking at even more Christian organizations than last time. Diakonia, from the ancient Greek diakonia, service, basically refers to the church's service to people and theologically relates to the commandments to love one's neighbor. Charity is known in Latin as caritas. This gives us a basis for the two names of our current organizations, the Protestant Diakonie and the Catholic Caritas.
Welcome to YD. Why do Germans do things the way they do?
The two organizations are not as old as the Church, not even as old as the Schism. The work of the Hospitallers, or later the Knights of St. John, goes back much further, but in this sense it is also a form of diaconia or charity. In other words, all religious orders dedicated to caring for the sick were diaconial or charitable. Various theologians repeatedly founded societies and foundations, one of the best known being Johann Hinrich Wiechers, who created the Raue House in Hamburg in 1833. It was there that he invented the Advent wreath. 15 years later, at the First Church Congress in Wittenberg in 1848, he spoke for 2 hours about diaconial work, which until then had often been regarded as rather amateurish. It was to become the central aspect in future. The Zentralausschuss für innere Mission der Deutschen Evangelischen Kirche, Central Committee for the Internal Mission of the German Protestant Church, was founded in 1849 and formed the basis for today's diaconie. The Kirchentag was covenant after the Revolution of 1848 because it was not clear how the regional churches should be organized in future. In 1897, Prelate Lorenz Wertmann and other Catholics founded the German Caritas Association in Cologne in a very similar way. The work for caring for the poor, sick, and orphans was particularly important during the First World War and the Weimar Republic. The churches were not sad about the Nazis coming to power, as various sections hoped that this would lead to a return to Christian traditions. But the Nazis had their own confused cult based on Nordic traditions and their own esotericism. As a result, the churches and their organizations were given a certain guarantee of survival, which in the case of the Catholic Church was negotiated with the Pope. In return, the churches, as a whole, did not interfere in politics and let the Nazis have their way. In addition, the welfare organizations that have brought into line took over a large part of the support for the poor, those in need of care, and youth groups, thereby deliberately competing with the church institutions in order to compete with them for the young people and give the Nazis the appearance of caring. There was also little opposition to the measures taken against Jews. Those who opposed the Nazis or preached against them were often banned from speaking or persecuted, imprisoned, and killed, such as Dietrich Bonhoeffer. After the Second World War and the liberation from the Nazis, there were again many orphans, poor people, and displaced persons. Another inglorious chapter was that of child abuse in the children's homes. In the 1950s and 1960s, many children were sent on holiday to convalescent homes to improve their health, often in rural areas on the North Sea islands or in mountainous regions. Unfortunately, these were often run in the spirit of black pedagogy, whether children's homes for foster children or spa homes for 3 to 6 weeks. The means of education were often violence, intimidation, and humiliation. It took a long time to come to terms with this, and it was not until 2021 that a fund was set up jointly by the federal government, the federal states, and the two churches, and a lump sum was paid to those affected as compensation. Around 30,000 victims applied to the fund. In contrast to various other aid organizations, both organizations were also active in the GDR and received financial support from the West. Overall, we can say that the tasks that Diakonie and Caritas have taken on in the East and West are almost identical. Both work in the care of the elderly and the sick and run their own hospitals. Both run children's homes, retirement homes, kindergartens, and facilities for people with disabilities. Both have counseling centers for social and family problems, as well as for debt and pregnancy counseling. However, Caritas does not issue a certificate for pregnancy conflict counseling as would be necessary for abortion. They provide counseling for migrants and addicts, run women's refugees and mother and child treatment centers. Both run the telephone counseling service Telefonseelsorge and to a large extent the station missioning, Bahnhofsmission. Both also have social department stores where second-hand clothing or household goods are offered at favorable prices. While the Catholic Church is clearly organized, the Protestant Church is divided into various regional churches. In addition, various free churches also support diaconie. As there are still religious orders with monks and nuns in the Catholic Church, in contrast, as we saw last time, there is actually only the Order of St. John in the Protestant Church, in which there are neither monks nor nuns. So the diaconesses are the closest thing to nuns in the Protestant Church. The size of the two organizations is comparable. Caritas employs around 740,000 people, over 80% of whom are women, and around 500,000 volunteers. In 2023, it generated a turnover of €244 million. This makes Caritas the largest charitable organization in Germany. Just under 630,000 people work in Diakonie with around 700,000 volunteers. This makes Diakonie the second largest charitable organization. As I showed here, different labor law applies to churches, which prohibits strikes, for example. In addition, you usually have to be a Christian and often in the appropriate denomination. Of course, anyone can take advantage of the help offered to refugees or migrants. Church kindergartens are also attended by children of other religion or none at all. Every hospital also cares for patients of all faiths and non-equally. Anyone who can identify with Christian values can volunteer in the other direction. Both organizations also offer positions as part of federal voluntary services and voluntary social year. If one sees charity and service to those in need as a central aspect of religious Christian activity, it is difficult to understand how people in some places turn their backs on the weakest and at the same time claim to be Christian. So if you are looking for a task within the framework of the churches, you will find it at Diakonie and Caritas. Why don't you take a look? Thank you for your attention. See you in the next video.